Hello there! Welcome back to Charles Circle, and welcome back to Captain of Industry. Last time, we set up our initial outpost on our third island. We also set up some basic Electronics 2 production and our first contract. Today, we're going to focus on implementing the new train network feature from 4.1, which was released between last episode and this one. Speaking of our third island, though, we officially have a name, and that is Feudal Raptor's suggestion of Ep.11. This one seemed a bit harder for us to name, so hey, why overthink it? Island number 3 becomes Ep.11. Pardon my pronunciation. I might even take it a step further and say, this island exists right now as one big mine for us, so maybe we'll refer to everything out this way as the Ep.11 Mining Company. The other thing that happened between episodes was we progressed some terraforming efforts during a very fun live stream. Thanks again to everyone who tuned in. If you weren't able to make it, but want to see it after, the VOD is available on the channel, and if that's not your thing, no worries, you didn't miss much game progress, and I'll give a quick recap now. So as I said, most of what we did during the live stream was just terraforming. As you can see, we have continued to progress our site preparation over here for our Electronics 2 Mega Factory in the longer run. We are fully through the ridge, we have scraped a good amount of the dirt, we are starting to move this ridge back as well, and we are deforesting on the other side of the ridge. The other big area of terraforming progress is over here in this soon-to-be contract area. We have already our slag for sludge contract that, now that it's been up and running, has been steadily producing a net surplus of hydrogen for us, which has been really good. We've also gotten a surplus of compost, and we have so far dealt with that by just adding another storage. It's not really a problem yet because you can just dump it directly like you can with dirt, but we're going to do something different with that later this episode as well. But it's good that we've been generating that extra hydrogen because we've actually had to be running our cracking unit quite a bit lately, because as our diesel consumption has continued to increase, we've been producing more and more of our byproducts here than we are capable of consuming for power. And that has mostly just been due to the slow but steady increase in diesel consumption over time as our vehicle network continues to expand, but it's also been recently due to a spike from running our ship out onto the map a bunch. And we did that as well during the live stream, and we discovered a couple of things, most importantly, the settlement out here that is going to unlock a contract that we are going to make use of later this episode as well. We are officially, with a 430 combat rating, combat locked on future expansion here until we can get more in the way of ship combat upgrades. Beyond that, we have also researched a few leftover technologies. I will sort of let you scroll through here slowly and compare progress to your tech tree at home if you are following along. But we are switching back to, we just got gold smelting, which is what we were researching at the end of last edited episode, and we'll continue on to the luxury goods technology. I'm not certain we'll get to implement either of those today. Let's see, but those are the next techs that I think are worth getting for us. All right then, let's get into today's to-dos. So the headliner today is going to be a train network revamp. This is something that we were building towards anyway, ourselves in our island. Our Arterials, the one we built last time, connecting what is now Ep.11, and the one that we built a little while ago now, connecting to Silicon Ridge, are both turning into these rather significant Arterials that will connect up all three islands. And as you can see, they intersect, or will intersect naturally, kind of in the middle of our old coal circulation loop. So it's going to need reworked for that reason. The other thing, though, to keep in mind is that, well, our base has evolved a bit in this area since we set this loop up, and so our needs are a little bit different now, too. Same as when we relocated the concrete factory, we should consider, is there a better way to do this if we were building it from the ground up today? And, well, part of this is just sort of awkward placement since we no longer have the concrete factory here. This is no longer sharing a station. It should just be a little bit closer and more convenient. I also think, for example, there's an argument, especially after one of the other to-dos later today, that we don't really actually need this coal power plant anymore, or if we do, it might be better rebuilt in a different location. The steel factory has also come a long way since we initially set this loop up. It doesn't actually get connected to the coal. We just send that directly from the mine, but it has now enough steel production that it might make sense to, for example, deliver its products by rail out and about. The same could easily be true of at least electronics coming from the copper factory, for whatever that's worth. And so the question becomes, all right, well, maybe we should do a local refactor at the same time that we also have this larger inter-island infrastructure connection that needs to happen. And that was likely to happen this episode no matter what, but man, what a convenient timing that 4.1 releases this new train network feature. And we'll talk more about it in detail when we dive into it, but the short version is essentially it's a way to make a subset of your trains act a little bit more like a truck network in a push-pull way without having to do all these manual single train line setups. So this is something I'm very excited to take advantage of, and I think it has a lot of potential, not only to make our existing train network more efficient and user-friendly, but also to increase the number of things that it makes sense to do by train in the first place, which is cool. It'll also give us the opportunity to have like sort of a waiting yard, a rail yard for trains that are not actively requested while they're sort of waiting around, and similarly have a sort of a centralized fueling station setup as well. As part of all of that, I think we might end up needing to relocate the exhaust scrubber. It's kind of in the way of where I think the two big rail lines are going to intersect. And we've also kind of outgrown the single capacity here. I think I mentioned a little while ago when we set it up in the first place that I tend to, at a certain point, just have one integrated into the steel factory. And I won't run through the math right now, but we're essentially at the point now where if this is running continuously, it absolutely deserves its own exhaust scrubber, and this is also serving several other things in the area that are running more often as well. So I think we'll probably remove this one, build a fully dedicated one here in the steel up factory area, and then consider maybe we need another one still inside this loop, but only serving the other side of it. So we'll figure that part out too, but I think we should take the opportunity while we're doing a rework in this area anyway. We've also got some more contracts that I think it makes sense for us to get into. I already mentioned, I think at the top, the sulfur for coal one that we unlocked by finding that settlement on the world map during the live stream. I've been hunting for this one for a while. It's one of my favorites. We can also expand our previous plan of taking our various landfill items once they are no longer helpful around the base, turning them into fuel gas and then hydrogen. And we have a bit of excess composting from the high volume of our slag contract lately, which is not a problem, but I have a way that we can turn that into something more valuable for us as well. The other big thing that I think we should probably do is implement some of these early construction parts for technologies. These are sort of one-time spends. They're not going to require a ton of continuous electronics 2 spending on an ongoing basis, which is good because we didn't set up all that much. But we should set up the actual production of of construction parts 4. So if you'll recall back to our earlier episodes, we have a blueprint to expand our construction parts factory to include construction parts 4 in the first place, which is great. We will also need to set up a maintenance 2 installation in this area, and then use those two things to afford and then maintain, respectively, the set of power technologies here that we'll talk through in a bit more detail. But these two are efficiency gains. There's exactly zero reason not to implement these. These are throughput gains, and I think we could actually productively use a couple of them at least. Beyond that, sort of an odds and ends section as always. We picked up, as I said, a bunch of sort of orphan technologies we hadn't either prioritized researching or bothered researching, and one of them was the chicken farm. Of the various sort of collection of odds and ends in this area, essentially, this sort of farming area of the tech tree that we picked up, I think this is the one that makes sense to implement now. We only provide one category of protein, right? The tofu. And as you can see, we're struggling to keep up on it very consistently. I've been intermittently boosting this food processor. The best way for us to handle that would be to provide the one or two of the other two categories of protein, and wouldn't you know it, the chicken farm will allow us to provide both of those, at least intermittently, and I think that's worth doing. I'm sure other stuff will come up along the way. Of course, as always, we will continue our long-term projects of terraforming and so on and so forth, but let's go ahead and dive into, I think we start with the train network revamp. All right, so the first thing I think I'm going to do is sketch in our rail lines for the two arterials so that we roughly know what it is that we're working around. That's not going to change no matter what, so we might as well just get it on the ground so that we can react around it. I will also say, someone asked during the live stream, these two tracks right on the bridge go right next to each other, but over here when building the arterial, I left a little bit of a space between the two tracks. Is that necessary? Why do I do that? It's a great question. It's absolutely not necessary, as shown by the fact that the bridge is there. I've always kind of done this, and I was trying to articulate why, and I thought about it, and I realized I think I just did it because I worried that the two trains would run into each other back in the day when it was implemented, and then never thought about it again. Which is a terrible reason. If you like it aesthetically, keep it. If you don't, well, you don't have to. You can run it sort of next to each other. And because I now can't unsee it, I think I'm also going to scooch everything over one tile. Again, you don't need to do this, but I will. So I'm going to do that and sketch where the two lines should intersect. See you in a moment. All right, so that's the rail adjustment sorted out. And as you can see, I haven't exactly deleted the things that are in the way, but I've sort of sketched out where we know the unbroken train line should be. And then this curve, I want to leave this open in the meanwhile so our base functions, but this curve will be essentially the big turn. So the next thing to do, I think, is to define what our new stations are going to be and where we want to have them on a per factory basis, essentially. And I think the other thing we probably need to do as we look at these rails is go ahead and get the exhaust scrubber situation sorted out. All right, so yeah, I think what makes sense to do first is move the exhaust scrubber. So we're going to set up one here at the steel plant and another one for everything else in a minute. We'll talk about it then. But the point is, for our blast furnace 2s, when they are running at 100% on the most polluting recipe, we make 36 per minute. The exhaust furnace 2s directly downstream of it make another 36. So we have 6 plus 6 times 36, 12 times 36, 432. That's quite a bit of exhaust, and it is very nearly all that an exhaust scrubber is capable of handling. Now, in practice, this hasn't backed up because these aren't all running constantly at the same time that everything else is, but the theoretical ceiling is absolutely higher than this single exhaust scrubber. So we'll just do one integrated here into the steel factory itself. I was thinking about exactly where to place it. I was wondering, do we need to save this space for another set of blast furnaces? Eventually we'll have the throughput to handle the full 8 here. We actually tidied up our workaround belt last time, so it wasn't on the floor and in the way. And we still use this, and we could extend a little bit further if we wanted to. That would push us up over the 480 that a single exhaust scrubber can handle. But if we need the steel, we need the steel. But we've been keeping up pretty well on it, despite using a lot of it lately. And these are not running anywhere near 100%. I think by the time we need to really genuinely think about adding a significant amount more steel capacity, we'll probably just want to make a whole new factory somewhere else. So I think we're going to be okay to just build it here in line. And worst case scenario, we'll move it again. We're doing it now, it's not that big a deal. So let's refamiliarize ourselves. What is the recipe we're going to be using here? Well, we're going to need to put in some limestone. Great news. Limestone's already a part of our steel factory. We're going to need water. Great news. Water's already part of our steel factory. Obviously the exhaust is included. We're going to spit out sulfur. That is something that we do not yet deal with at this plant. We're going to have to deal with that. We'll vent the CO2 for now. And we have the steam low and slag to dispose of. Slag, great news. We already have slag disposal integrated. You're starting to see why this is something that I tend to just have built into most steel plants at a certain point in the game. The other thing, I remember talking about this when we first set up our exhaust scrubbers and saying, you know, we could run this steam low through a low pressure turbine before sending it through the cooling tower. There's really no reason not to do it, but it's a little bit more, in my opinion, you know, trouble than it's worth. And I got some fun, I don't know if to say pushback, but people making different choices, and that's awesome and great, by the way. Like what I don't make decisions for you. I illustrate examples and the full set of options, and I'll even, you know, if it's not necessarily a recommendation, I'll explain why I'm doing something my way. But you can and should do things differently if you see it differently, or just want to do it differently. So in order to honor that, I suppose, as we revamp this, we're going to slot in a low pressure turbine, and we'll get a little bit of extra power out of it. Why not, right? Now, in order to do that, in order to get a low pressure turbine 2 in here, we are going to need the construction parts 4. So I promise we will set it up. We're not going to do it immediately because I just don't want to detour us that hard that far, but we'll set it up as part of this episode for sure. So what we'll probably do here is rotate it around and just set it up more or less in line here with where the limestone line actually already is, so that we can simply connect up like so, give ourselves space to run these pipes in, and run the outputs out. So I'm going to jump into a bit of a time lapse here and handle it real quick. See you in a moment. All right, so I think this will work. Of course, we'll have to actually get things built real quick, but let's walk through it. So the exhaust scrubber, of course, as we said, will take in its exhaust and water, these two inputs here and here, respectively. The water branches off from the same water main we have out here, but it is going to prioritize the recycling loop, which we'll talk about in a second. The exhaust, we will simply flip the direction on this pipe, increase its throughput, just to be safe. Shouldn't need it, don't think, but just in case, and run it all the way through here, and that should handle all of this. Once that's done, we'll be able to delete this entire segment, by the way, which will be nice. On the third input then, the limestone, as we said, we just continue this line out this way, nice and convenient. And on the output side, it's very simple to get rid of the CO2. We run it through the same large smokestack as before, and the slag output just comes out here and meets up with the rest of this slag disposal line going out to the exact same loose storage out here. Last thing to dispose of before we talk about power is the sulfur. It's not a convenient storefront already here. I didn't really think it was worth running a super long line out this way just so it lined up with, I don't know, take your pick out here. I also think we're going to end up redoing some of this as we get a train station built in here. So at least for now, this is the problem. A lot of what we're doing today has interdependencies with each other. I wouldn't be shocked if we end up changing some of this, but at least for now, we'll just put it out here. This certainly works. It's just a question of whether or not it'll be what we decide to do in the longer run, but I think it should work. Speaking of the longer run, in order to build this and this specifically, we're going to need construction parts 4. We don't have those set up yet. No matter what, we're going to need a cooling tower here because it'll have to handle the steam depleted in the longer run. So this is going to be a temporary during construction pipe to simply dispose of the steam low and get back water as we did before. And once this is built, then we'll delete this pipe, reconnect here, and run the steam depleted. out of this turbine set into the cooling tower. By the way, we didn't explicitly talk about it. This is a low pressure turbine too. It is in many ways just a double throughput low pressure turbine 1. The low pressure turbine 1 is the same essentially size. It's an upgrade in place, upgrade, and it does the same thing. Steam low in, mechanical power, and steam depleted out. It is in fact the same ratios, 48:6:48 instead of 24:3:24, so it's not any more efficient, at least from that perspective, but it is more efficient from a manpower perspective. Really big deal. We save exactly 2 workers on this, and it does cost us, instead of 1.5 maintenance 1, 1.5 maintenance 2. I think these are the far less valuable upgrades within this technology, but at the same time, higher throughput, lower footprint, lower worker cost, all of the food and water and everything that goes into keeping up a worker. I don't want to undersell either, but I only draw that point because the other upgraded pieces we have here are better efficiency in addition to being throughput. So a power generator large does the same job as a power generator small. This normally goes 3 mechanical power to 2 electrical power. This goes 18 mechanical power to 15 electrical power. So 2 things. 1, that's a throughput jump, isn't it? Makes up for the fact that it's a little bit wider, but it does the job of 6 of these, and as you can appreciate, it is smaller than 6 of these. Not only that, I would argue more important than that, is that we get 2/3 here. We get more than 2/3 here, right? We get 5/6 here. It is 25% more efficient. So where we would take this 18 in these 6 power gener basics, we would get 6 times 2 is 12 out. Here we're getting, for the exact same input, 3 extra free megawatts, right? 25% more power for free. So this is just all kinds of good. Smaller footprint, more efficient, far more efficient, and higher throughput. That's lovely. The same is generally true on the cooling tower large compared to the cooling tower small or basic. These do 24 each. These can do 4 times that, so this is 4 of these smaller cooling towers in capacity, but we get back 50% by volume in a basic cooling tower. We get back 3/4 by volume in a cooling tower large. So again, more throughput and more efficiency. So it's not that these low pressure and high pressure turbine 2 upgrades are bad, it's that they're good, but these, the power generator large and the cooling tower large, are even better. So we'll be using those everywhere. We'll go through and upgrade, for example, at least the power generators and the cooling towers in this power plant. We'll talk about it later, but I think we could actually do some more throughput here as well. And in fact, if we do all of that, that's part of why I think we could actually just decommission this coal power plant, at a minimum relocate it somewhere else, or spin it up in the future again if we need it somewhere else. So in order to get this all up and running here, we're gonna have to build everything. Like I said, we won't build this set yet. So we'll build everything but that. And we will just get back some of that water in the meanwhile. So I will dive in here, let our trucks get after it. I guess I don't actually have the Unity since I burned it all immediately, fixing all of those rail yards. So let's skip ahead here until we are up and running in this area. All right, I think a little while later we are fully up and running and everything's working just fine. Good news. So that also means that we'll be able to delete this pipe segment, which will be a nice little refund and dopamine hit from cleaning up. I don't want to delete this quite yet because we still need to decide what we're going to do with the exhaust coming from these other areas. So we have, as a reminder, 3 other sources of exhaust that we are currently going to back up if we don't either handle with a new exhaust scrubber or some other decision. The first, and I think largest, if I had to guess, is the collective output of our electronics factory, the copper factory that also produces electronics, whatever you want to call it. So we have a pair of blast furnaces in this area, as well as the arc furnace here making silicon, and the polymerization plant. This doesn't fire very often, but when it does, it spits off a decent amount of exhaust as well. Those all pool up and come out through this pipe, where it meets up with all of the exhaust occasionally generated when the coal boiler for this power plant, and, for what it's worth, the steam to run the bridge shuttle to Silicon Ridge and back, that also runs on steam. Those are those cute little steam boiler trains. So we do have some occasional exhaust that comes out this way. If we do decommission this power plant in the future, we will have to come up with a different way to provide fuel. The last little bit of exhaust that we do catch is from this single blast furnace 2, firing 3/4 of the time apparently to make all of the glass that we need. So individually, we could probably just dump all of those into the sky and be fine, but that feels unsatisfying. It feels like a step in the wrong direction. What has me hemming and hawing a little bit, the reason I'm reticent, is until we know what this whole new rail yard situation looks like, it's going to be kind of throwing a dart to see if where we place it is actually ideally where we want it in the future. But I'm not going to fall into the analysis paralysis rabbit hole and let, perfect be the enemy of good. As I said, there's just too much interdependency going on here, so we're just going to have to, I think, accept that there will, on occasion here, be some inefficiency. So, no matter what, we know this is not the right spot for it, but I suppose what we could do is just move these storages and pipes for now and let our tracks pass through. And if we want to relocate it further in the future, do that then. So it'll look a little awkward, I'm sure, but I think that'll be the right move for now. So I'm going to dive in and take care of that quickly as well. All right, at a minimum, we'll come back and clean up the piping here, but I think this will work for us for now, at least just to get this set of tracks through the area. And in the meanwhile, we'll still be able to run the various facilities that we are currently processing exhaust from. So, very good. This is, I think, clarifying. The next thing we need to do is go through on a factory by factory basis and talk about, well, what do we want to import? What do we want to export? Because the cool thing about train networks, maybe we dive in and talk about them very briefly. What we do is we set up a series of stations that each can be now, and let's maybe grab one of these, can now be set up to say, oh, well, please keep this full, and we can then pull from, on the loading side, keep empty sort of trains, right? So if this feels analogous to the truck network, it's very much that. It's a smaller, predefined, narrower set of called train trucks, so to speak, that allow us to move around in a responsive way any number of different goods that are on the same network using the same trains. And so what this means is, for example, this would no longer be, oh, just a coal train. This is a train with a bunch of loose cars that can service loose good distribution, and it'll chill here in this future rail yard area that we make, and oh, when the network says, oh, we need coal over here, and we have some here, the train will be dispatched one off to make that sort of a delivery. Similarly, this same train, though, while waiting here, could be operating on, let's just say, the slag disposal part of the train network, where we say, oh, well, anytime slag builds up at the steel factory and we want to run it out to our contract off in the distance, that would be a receiving station, this same train could go out in a responsive way, just go grab whatever slag we want and drop it off. Because we don't have to dedicate single trains to an entire single back and forth line or loop, this means you can justify things that don't require as much throughput. I think there's sort of a long tail of trips that, just to illustrate on our truck network side, so like we occasionally need to deliver, let's just say, sulfur to a handful of places. And we make sulfur a handful of places, right? We make some in the refinery, we make some at, the exhaust scrubber. We then use some, a little bit out this way for food, for fertilizer and tofu. And we use some, a little bit out here for acid production, a little bit out here for acid production. And so it's not something that you would have a single dedicated train, right? Making a collection and delivery loop there. But if one train that would run, very infrequently, but occasionally, rather than it sitting there and waiting 90% of the time and doing nothing, clogging up, your tracks and all of that, even in a waiting station, you can just have it be something that works when it needs to. And so you can put together the trains that would do a series of long tail trips and put them into an overall network. Imagine if our truck network essentially had to be assigned one by one to say, oh, well, this truck is specifically required to deliver steel from here to here. And anytime it's not doing that, it will sit idle. Like, how much worse would our truck network operate if that's how it were? So that's undoing that dynamic in the train network is the idea of what this train network feature does in theory. So let's dive in and see how it works in practice, but that's the idea. It's been in the experimental branch for, I think, a few weeks now, but I haven't dove in and really used it in full, certainly not in this file. So I'm excited to learn as we go here. So please do share your experiences and observations with it. It's early days, right? So we all got to figure out what this is and is not useful for together, which is fun. Love that stuff. So let's dive in and pick, let's say a starting station set, or this factory. What do we bring in and out in high volumes? What would it make sense to have a train station here for delivery of? So, and we aren't going to commit to spacing at all right now, but let's just, as a way to sort of mark interest here, we could say, well, let's grab a unit module for probably like electronics would be something that we use in pretty high volume here, I would say. We make it here and then we send it out to the rest of the base. And there's lots of little places we use electronics. Here for both maintenance and for research, right? It's one of our big inputs there. It's occasionally a use out here in vehicle parts for sure, and then occasionally certain vehicles, once we have hydrogen for trains and trucks, will also directly require the input of electronics. We also use it over here as a pretty high volume input for our construction parts factory, because every single construction parts too has an electronics in it, right? Lots of little places. That's exactly what I think this train network situation is set up to help us with. The one-to-many or many-to-many, or even many-to-one set of jobs in your base. So this makes sense. Longer run, I suppose we could make certainly the same argument for electronics too. Ideally, we don't end up distributing this in super high volume here. We don't make it in super high volume. But all the places we would send it are still places that are going to need it in the future. So there's still value in setting up at least the delivery side of that, even if the sort of the production side of it is a little bit underpowered in the shorter term. Other things we drop off here in high volume. Well, the first thing I would say, if this were anywhere other than directly next to a copper mine, would be copper, right? This is obviously the highest volume item that we use anywhere. We do, you could make an argument, we use a decent amount of sand. I mean, 6 here, 6 here, really it's about the arc furnace here. it makes 30, but at the same time, we don't use this at 100%. It's only occasionally making we use total of, if everything were running at max all the time, we use a total of 6 silicon poly, which means one of these running at half speed, so 6 molten silicon. This fella's running at 1/4 speed at most, which means we are not using nearly that much sand. So I don't know, in the longer run, if this ended up being a larger factory for us, absolutely, we should be delivering sand by train, but I don't know if that's extremely necessary right now. Coal we do use in decent volumes, right? Both of these going at the same time as 30. We do deliver coal by rail today already, so we don't have to re-justify that necessarily. I think that is probably worth at least dropping a station module down here for. You might also make the argument that slag disposal is a pretty reasonable thing for us to be getting rid of. Our production specifically here at this station is not a ton, but we're going to make that decision several times at different factories, right? And so between the fact that we're going to get lots of it a lot of different places and the fact that we have 2 different drop-offs that we can justify right now, the concrete factory takes slag and the contract that we set up last time also takes slag, I think this is something that's a good candidate for rail and one that becomes a better candidate with the network feature. So that's kind of cool. I like that. Other things just to sort of dismiss, rubber is not high volume necessarily. I think that's fine for now. Same thing with glass. We use some, not a ton. Copper doesn't go anywhere else. All of these items are pretty small fluid volumes. Sulfur, you could make the slag argument with sulfur, but it's also pretty small volumes of actual consumption here. So I'm not so sure that we end up doing that here. I think these 4 are probably our best initial candidates for stations. We'll talk about arrangement later, but let's just start with the right goods. If we keep this coal power plant, it obviously requires coal. That one was easy. If we come over here to the glass factory, coal, again, already delivered. I don't think it makes sense to send glass via rail. It's not used in high volume, really. Like, we use it a little bit out here for research parts, right? It's not at all the biggest piece by volume here, and it's just down the road, so the occasional truck trip is not very far. The same is true for vehicle parts. It's a small component of a low volume thing, and it's pretty close. So I don't think we're going to send glass anywhere by rail right this moment. Longer run, our use of glass and our relationship with it is going to evolve, and it may not even mean having glass in this particular location. So I think for now, we're going to go ahead and just say, well, let's just see if we can drop off coal again here some other way. We're going to end up moving the station, spoiler alert. Over here, this is another more interesting one. I think we probably are looking at, these should both be load. Yes, they are. We're probably looking at, I would say probably like a double station of steel export. Again, location to be determined, but this is a pretty high volume thing now that we use a lot of different places, in contrast to glass, right? For example, we use steel over here. It's a slightly bigger part of vehicle parts. Over here, though, we use a lot more of it for all of our various mechanical parts. That goes into a lot of different things here. It's the 2/3 by volume of maintenance 1. It's 2/3 by volume of our research 1. And over here, of course, we use a ton of it, right? This would probably justify its own line, period. I was already flirting with this in the old model because we use 12 steel to make our construction parts 1, sort of a 1 for every 2 of these, but then they get compressed back down, so it's 1 for every 1 of these, in the same way that electronics is. But then we layer it in here and we add it to our parts 2 to get our parts 3. That's only going to increase as we add the parts 4 row here in a moment. So I do think that steel export is going to be something we want to get set up by rail. This is where it gets interesting, because you could make an argument in the longer run, this coal is not really going to serve us everywhere. We are eventually going to need to import coal. We are eventually going to need to import iron ore, limestone, so on and so forth. We're going to need to, until then, dispose of rock and slag. Or we could make an argument that this probably should have some sort of at least waste disposal export station. It might even be separate from the steel export itself, like 2 different stations in this area. That feels a little bit more palatable to me. So I think what we'll do for this is say, all right, well, we're going to do 3 loose modules, load up all of the excess slag, if I could type, all of the excess rock, and all of the excess dirt. I think that will make sense for us. Again, placement to be evolved. If we're going to collect those things, and by the way, should we think about maybe adding a rock and dirt dump over here as well? Probably. It's a more pure mine so far, but that's not guaranteed to stay. So this is less of a factory disposal. Well, the slag obviously is. It's the mine disposal that happens to be going along with it. But then we have to send those somewhere. That is what this area is for, and that's why we are so aggressively pushing back the mountains here. So we're going to have to drop off our slag in this area for this contract. Unload slag. And we're going to do something similar. Just get these out of the way for now, but roughly speaking, for rock and dirt, right? And the other place that we need those things is out here. So we do want to allow the drop off of rock here and slag here. Do we need to, this is another high volume export, do we need to send our concrete anywhere via rail? I actually don't think that that is necessary here. Mostly, depending on how much we're paving, it's a construction good, right? Which means we have to send it, well, wherever the heck we're paving recently. So it's not like there's a better central location. This is already pretty central. The highest volume where it's consumed, though, is out here, across the street, for the construction parts plant. And that's why we set this up here when we did, because it is a direct line for us to run a belt over if we want to do that. So we have that option already, and we don't need it to be a train station. Over here though, right, this is where we said steel and electronics 1 could be helpful, so maybe we'll grab that, call it here, and steel being here. These should both be unload stations. Again, we're not placing these with certainty on location, just sort of getting them nearby so we can think about it. We also drop off, as we said, electronics 1 and steel here in pretty high volumes. Could also make an argument for wood, I think specifically at the construction parts factory. Did we cover everything? Not quite. There's also here. We have steel and electronics 1 here as well. All right, now that we have all of our modules placed, we know what items we are delivering to and from at each factory and delivery location. So what I'm going to do next is go in and finalize placement of each of these modules at different stations and connect them on one end to the tracks and on the other end to the factories themselves. I'm not going to time-lapse this. I think it's going to take me a little bit of time. I'm not sure that there's a ton of value in it compared to just showing you where the stations are at the end, and our runtime is already getting up there pretty quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and cut ahead now, and I'll see you in a moment to walk through where everything ends up. Alright, welcome back. I had to advance the game a little bit in order to get things all properly sketched out, but we officially have stations and rails. There's a lot new here, so in order to walk through it digestibly, we're going to do this stepwise as we build it, because we're going to have to build it in a certain order anyways. You know, the main rails and then the supporting stations and stuff before we get into the individual factory drop-off stations. So let's start with that bit. And in fact, before we start with the main infrastructure, let's define for ourselves the purpose of this network, which is to shuttle lots of little things around this manufacturing area. These are going to be short trips in tight areas. As such, our default train for this network is going to be some variation of this. So a double-ended 2 fireless steam locomotives with a single, maybe 2 of these Tier 2 wagons. Now a Tier 2 wagon has 480 capacity, which is roughly equivalent, right, to one of these Tier 2 storages, which has 500. So it is a deceptively large amount of capacity, despite the fact that it's only a single wagon. And the double-ended nature does 2 things for us. One, it means we can use terminus stations, something like this, or this, where the train can come in and then back out without having to have this big turnaround loop. That's really important in this area, because we didn't build this with enough space to have these massive loops every time we need a section to have a station or 2, right? And the other nice little thing here is these are not the world's most powerful locomotives. They're certainly fine for short, flat trips, but I really don't mind having a second one on here. It'll help keep these shuttles pretty zippy. So, as I said, there's a lot to build here, but step 0 is the new shared track infrastructure, which is in blue currently. I've unpaused the construction, but haven't let our trucks dig into it quite yet, so hopefully you're like me and you find color a helpful visual organizer. So just to orient you, our 2 main arterials meet up here as planned at sort of the intersection, long distance of the 2 bridges, right? There's also this new, now fully bidirectional, 2, right-hand drive, 2 sets of tracks, this little spur out in this direction that comes all the way through and back around in order to service the steel factory and the coal mine. As you can maybe, hopefully tell, I tried using existing tracks where possible, sort of reusing what we already had laid down to minimize our sort of construction costs, but also the complexity in changing if you're following along at home. So some of these things should be familiar still, hopefully. And I did have to start cleaning up, as you can also see in red here, the original remnants of the coal loop in order to get a lot of this stuff actually sketched out properly and make sure that what I was building was good and correct. The last big infrastructure update over here is I haven't committed on whether or not we're going to keep the coal power plant yet, one way or another. I don't mind keeping this manually full until we decide. If we do decide to keep it around, though, we'll definitely, obviously, add a train station since it will be a pretty high volume over time sort of situation. And the last thing I'll mention is that these pipes and everything are all at the correct height for most trains, but if we ever did want to come back and electrify these tracks and use electric trains, we do need to bump them up, I think, an extra level. I think they require a clearance of 4 instead of 3. So if that's something you know you want to do in the longer run, do make sure that here and anywhere you cross your tracks, you give a little bit more clearance than you think you need. So besides this general shared infrastructure, there are a couple things that a train network requires no matter what stations we have hooked up. Those 2 things are fuel stations and waiting bays. So fuel stations, this is where our trains are going to be told to go anytime they are low on their fuel. And by the way, you can actually, in contrast to pre-update 4.1, you can actually set exactly when you want a train to say, I am low on fuel. You can define how low is. It used to only ever be 30. I think that's still a fine default, but it's always nice to have control over something like that. So what is our refueling strategy? So keeping in mind that we are talking about fireless steam locomotives, we need to supply steam. This is going to be our main, call it gas station area, I suppose. This is actually the original station that was and still is going to deliver coal to our glass factory. But since it's right here in a relatively central area, which seems like a helpful thing for a gas station to be central, we are going to leach off a little bit of that coal, run it into a boiler, grabbing some water from over here, and then returning the exhaust also over here. So we will boil up some steam high and send it into at least one, probably two, maybe three, four, whatever, however many of these we actually want to give in the longer run of these refueling stations. So these do not need to load or unload anything. They exist simply for a train to come in, top off, and then leave. And you'll be able to see these are sort of bidirectional tracks where they just come on in and then they zip back out. So this is the primary refueling station. You notice that the way that we have this set up, it's stealing its coal from a different station that needs to be full anyway. The other fueling station that I have out here is sort of to run a comparative experiment. So here, this should look familiar. It is the original coal drop-off station for our copper factory. We're going to, as you'll see in a bit, drop everything off here instead now. But I figured it's already here, and I'd like to kind of see, does having a train have to come deliver the coal really clog it up? Does that get in the way of the fact that it's a helpful refueling station? My bet is it doesn't matter at all, but I figured why not find out? It's already here, and if nothing else, it's probably good to have a little bit of geographical diversity in where your fueling stations are, so that you can go to the nearest gas station rather than having to go all the way across town just to come all the way back if you happen to be working in one area instead of the other. So that's the other one. I have a feeling we'll add more in the future, but let's just see how these first ones go. The other thing that we need is, as we mentioned, the waiting bays. This is just where you park a train so it's not clogging up the lanes on the tracks. And I don't know how many of these we'll actually need. I think if you have too many, or you need too many of these, you probably just have too many trains. So I can't imagine that we will oscillate our number of train demand by more than this. But if we do, when we do, we can add more either in this area or anywhere else. I suppose that some geographic diversity in your waiting yard location is also of some value as well. So this is going to be our first pass, and it'll be our first pass at all of this, right? I know we'll end up adding certainly a bunch of trains to improve throughput. We might end up in some places having to add stations to improve throughput. So we're just going to get it started and see how it meets our needs and how that all evolves. Plus, there's obviously lots of cleaning and tidying work to do here in the longer run, whether we keep this facility or not. A lot of these pipes are now in ridiculous looking places, and much paving needs done to adjust all of the changes we've made here. But I think the first thing that we need to do, no matter what, is just get the main infrastructure pass-through zones all sorted out. And then, as I mentioned, at least one of the fueling stations and waiting bays. And while that's happening, I'll also queue up, let's say, maybe a couple of these. There's going to be two versions of this, I think, that we should probably make. The flatbed wagon, right, to move around, for example, steel and electronics. We'll eventually get electronics 2 going too, but I don't think we need to do that quite yet. But so we'll have the flatbed hopper, and then these are the flatbed wagons, and then the hopper is the other one that we'll need to make. So just to show it, but I think you understand, we'll get a few of these going as well for coal and also for rock, dirt, and slag, which we'll talk about in a moment, but there's a little bit you can see in the distance of new tracks in that area too. Step by step though. So I'll start here, and I'm gonna go ahead and skip ahead so that you can just see when there's an update. Talk soon. All right, a little while later, our main infrastructure is all built. We have our 4 waiting bays filled with trains ready to go, and our first gas station here and here are both complete. So now it's time to actually put these trains to use. So let's start our network by recreating the old coal circulation loop that we used to have. So we'll go here and we add our cargo stations. So we're going to select every station that coal either originates from or is delivered to. So our coal mine export, our gas station delivery here, and then the glass factory that also supplies the coal to this gas station. That should do it. And yeah, just like that, we have a little train off to go pick up from our coal mine. One other thing I added, actually, as I was watching these trains come out and make their way to the station yard before I built this track, they were going to go all the way to the other island and back to turn around. The way we've built this, it's very clockwise centric, and there's no easy motion for them to reverse if they are coming out of the waiting bays. And rather than creating a whole bunch of, individual exits, I figured, yeah, let's just add a little loop if they feel the need to turn around here. I don't know, we'll probably come up with something a little bit more elegant in the longer run, but this works for now. So he will head on out this way and pick up some coal and bring it out. I believe his destination is probably this one, because this is out of coal. Yep, and as you can see. So here, it's just like the truck storage sliders, right? We simply say, all right, great, keep this full, please. And the train network handles it from there. So he only took, I guess, as much as he believes he can fit in here. The other thing we could do, you can link a storage, right, to the actual drop-off station and say, well, actually, please keep in mind that there's also this storage to fill. And so when he comes back next time, well, there will be some coal here already, but when he comes back next time, it's now out of 740 that he's keeping in mind. And in fact, did another train already go? Yes. Another train is already on its way to go grab some more coal. So that's it. It's kind of point and click like that. So the other thing that we would want to do then is get some of these other pieces going. So our steel export, right, is one. And maybe we would get that going next to, shall we say, the construction parts factory. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of those pieces built, and we'll come back to you when we're ready to run that line. All right, and we have steel delivered over to the construction parts factory. So this import station has electronics here, steel here, wood here. We'll have to bring in wood from our other islands, and the electronics from the copper factory. So we'll probably do that one next. I did also go ahead and connect up the concrete slabs directly as well. It's starting to get a little busy in this area. It's kind of fun. So good news there. That is up and running. And yeah, I think it's time to get working on the copper factory exports as well. So let's start over here with the export. Talk about the import in a minute, but we'll let our trucks build it all. This is pretty straightforward. We have electronics 1 and 2 for export. So we'll simply say, hey, if we've got any here, great. Let's go ahead and connect these storages as well. Oh, and something I meant to point out over at the steel factory, by the way, you don't need to connect this here because anything that's directly attached is already counted, which is a nice little intuitive bit of behavior on the network front. It's very good. I'll come back to you when we have an electronics 1 export as well. All right, so with this station set up, I think it's time to connect this to the network. So let's open it up. Same network, right? Easy as pie. We're just going to add the export here, and we already should have the electronics import over here. So hopefully, in short order, that'll trigger a trip from one of these trains. And here we go. We've got enough electronics finally piled up to load up our little shuttle over here. So he'll run that over to the construction parts factory in a moment. I'm boosting. I had a little lapse in copper there earlier. But the other thing that we'll do while we're here is this is going to be our loose station. So one of the things you can probably appreciate, these trains are going to do a bunch of different jobs, but they're all going to be the same type of job if you want to use these cars to be interconnected. So what I've done is to make the unit stations, like all the different unit goods, in one station to be serviced by one type of train, and all of the loose goods to be serviced over here in another. And so this station, despite the fact that it's part import, this is the coal that we'll need to add here shortly, and part export, we're going to dump all of our landfill stuff. It's both an import and an export station, but most importantly, it's a loose station, because this could be serviced then by the same type of train doing different things. So let's go ahead and, I'm impatient, Unity build this and add this to the network for coal service. This should bring in coal in a moment. So the other place that we need steel and electronics both is this single station, actually, that is going to split outputs between the relatively small amounts that we need for our vehicle parts factory and the larger amounts by throughput that our labs and maintenance collectively consume. So go ahead and get this built as well. Once this is up and running, we'll add it to the network. It's just that simple. You just add one station at a time, and there you go. So far, the number of trains we have is sufficient. We'll see if that ends up being the case once we scale also to include disposing of our rock, slag, and dirt, which you'll see in a moment there's a plan for. I think we'll have to add some more trains at that point. But so far, so good. And with this station now added to the network, we have steel on the way and electronics hopefully soon thereafter. Alright, so I'm noticing that the throughput of a single station isn't enough on this end to really keep up with our steel, but this is actually an opportunity to show off something else that's kind of cool about this update as well. So if we have multiple of these stations, you actually only need a single output. So what we're going to do is make this into a second steel station, and then make a new electronics one just over here to the side. So now, when this drains, it should average the outputs of both of these steel stations. Because we have those tier 2 trains coming through, they should both be able to unload, moving twice as quickly, and having a bit more of a storage buffer in here. And here he goes. And as you can see, this single station is draining its output, despite the fact that we're only connected on this one. 160, also 160. Kind of nice. You don't have to set up all these multiple outputs, keeps things a lot more organized. All right, so I think that's kind of the last of the unit goods that I wanted to make sure that we had delivered here immediately. Steel and electronics everywhere we need it, pretty much exclusively by train now. That's quite the improvement. I'm impressed. So for what it's worth, I did end up adding at least one train, I believe, of each type, the hopper and the flatbed wagons. In fact, I don't have to try to remember, I can simply tell you, yeah, 6. So we have 3 of each, and we have someone waiting usually every once in a while, so I think it's the right balance so far. Now it's time for stage 2. Stage 2, I've already built all these stations, but is to also dispose of our landfill stuff. So we're going to try to take all of the excess of, well, any of the dirt, period, here, and the excess of the rock and slag that comes through here, but isn't immediately used for concrete. So any of that flows through here to this station. We will deliver with highest priority here to our concrete factory. So we'll say keep, and we'll say put this at, call it 9, just so that it's slightly higher than our other options. And we also have over here at the copper factory, similarly, the removal of all 3 landfill options that we also touched on already at that station, I believe. And we're not going to chase and get every last little bit of slag from for example, from the exhaust scrubber, or even, I don't think, from the glass factory necessarily. But those are our 2 biggest producers, and they're connected to 2 of our largest mines. So it feels like that's a pretty good starting spot at least. What are we going to do with it? Well, as you remember, we had our slag contract out this way, along with the future intention of setting up the rock and dirt for fuel gas contracts. And I've built them. And I've even connected them to rail. And I've connected them to rail via a new bridge. Kind of fun. Been looking for an excuse to use one of these truss bridges that's sort of like within the island transport. That's kind of how I think about it. These larger fellas, the cable-stayed ones, are for connecting islands, and this is for moving around within islands. And this was enough of an elevation drop that it was going to be pretty difficult to do with just your traditional, raising the elevation of a track like so. It's just kind of hard to gain that much height in a convenience and aesthetic way. And you know what? What the heck? Why not, right? That's exactly what this is for. So we've got ourselves a nice little intersection here and a reroute of our highway accordingly. And then trains will come down here and drop everything off. So first, this is our slag station. Then this will be our rock station. So let's go ahead and pick a contract, right? So the rock for fuel gas is right here. It's going to cost us some unity right away and to continuously use. But there we are. So these 3 will take rock, and this will spit back out our fuel gas. So rock, 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 fuel gas out. This fuel gas will come out here and flow into, this same balancer that we already had set up from last time, so that we can fuel the boiler, which runs the hydrogen reformers. And I did build this second reformer now as well. The other contract is dirt for fuel gas. So let's get that one set up too. Right here. Just enough unity to get it going. Nice. And assign like so. So this obviously is our dirt. This is a pretty good ratio. We get back 2 fuel gas for every dirt that we send. It's a lot better than the rock one, by the way, where we have to send 4 for every 1 we get back. Again, these ratios aren't perfect. We only have 4 slots, so we can allocate, 3 and 1, 2 and 2, 1 and 3. It's gonna have to do for now. But then these are gonna be our returned fuel gas. The trains should come in and handle this if we have it all set up properly, but we'll need to add a few more trains, I think. These are longer distance, if nothing else, and I think it probably makes sense to add some larger trains just to see how that goes. So I'm going to suggest we do something like this. I'm curious. I don't know exactly how it's going to go, but we'll play around with it. So I'd say let's add 1 here. Maybe even a second one. And then go to the train network itself, and I suppose what we could do, if we wanted, would be to put these onto a separate network entirely. And maybe that's the move here. Let's do that, actually. So instead, we're going to go new line, although actually I suppose we should just delete this and say new network. So we'll say landfill disposal. We'll use the same fuel stations and cargo stations though. Nothing wrong with that. fuel stations, and waiting bays. Apologies. But so we'll use these 4. And then the cargo stations we'll use are this one, and then the concrete plant, and our 3 contract lines. I think this should work. We'll want to make sure that the trains that we're building here get placed onto the correct one. But this should otherwise work just fine, I think. Maybe we'll say 3, so that we have 1 for each good going at a time. Or start with 2 and see how it goes from there. But yeah, so I'm going to let those get built, and we'll see how the second network adapts. We'll also probably want to incorporate, once that's moving, the dirt that we are slowly bringing over from this island. And actually that's a good prompt to maybe give some updates from around the base. We've been very focused on the train network itself, but you know, time has passed, so things have happened here on the base. We're continuing to make some terraforming progress over here, really flattening this mountain, which has been excellent. We are continuing to deforest out in this area, and the other point I should make on the terraforming front, here it is finally, is our iron mine. So I've started to go down to clear out these edges. I probably should have done this a while ago, but was finally pushed to do so because we ran out of space here for our train to go any further. So I've added some mining walls here because I'm finally bothering to use them now that I can click and drag to build instead. It's so much less painful, such a lower barrier to entry. So we're going to take care of this and then fill it back in so that we can use this land in the future. And other thing to know, our oil deposit is already very nearly gone, which is wild. It wasn't a huge deposit, and we are a pretty thirsty refinery, all things considered. So I suppose it's not shocking, but that went quickly, didn't it? That went very quickly. So fun fact, I went to go change this to hydrogen on this ship, as we already previously had over here, right? This one runs on hydrogen, has for a little bit now. And as you probably just noticed, it wasn't an option, which is odd. What's going on there? Then I thought to myself, we actually didn't research hydrogen vehicles, did we? And then I thought to myself, maybe I should check the patch notes. And wouldn't you know it, fixed that hydrogen was available as a ship fuel without the required research completed. Neat. So we took advantage of a bug last time, I guess. Easy to fix. I've just snuck it in here. It was already, you know, one of the next available ones for us. So we're going to grab that real quick so that we can continue with our strategy of hydrogen fueling. But yeah, whoops. Fun little thing we got away with there, I suppose. So something else that we'll do while we're in that contract area is, I told you we have some excess compost, and that's not really a problem. You can dump it like you would with dirt, but it is gathering in larger quantities in a lot of our backup spots, including over here as well. So we should probably do something about that now, and that something is you can mix it with gravel to get dirt in twice the volume. So you can double it into dirt. Now, it's a little bit extra work, but given what we're going to get back for our dirt here, if we were, for example, going to dump that rock, well, the ratio for rock is a lot worse. So it's not so much about making dirt, it's about using gravel, or improving gravel's rate, I suppose, via compost. Again, this is all very extra. You can be throwing all of this stuff into the sea if you prefer. I'm just trying to squeeze out a little bit more hydrogen in the net here. We'll see if we can make a tiny bit of an early hydrogen economy off of this. So we'll set this up here, and we are going to keep the gravel full. We are only going to accept the compost here, and we will request the compost here instead. Now I'll also delete this, I suppose, and that should get us running on making dirt over here. We'll just feed it directly into the cargo ship. Alright, I've just swapped both of our new cargo ships over to hydrogen with the research complete. I should also take this opportunity to name our cargo ships. We've started naming them after folks who donated or joined as channel members in the last few days after we've launched our memberships. It is now an active thing you can do. So to show appreciation for some folks who have, I'm going to start putting some names down here. So thank you to Borky, who now has the privilege of commanding our Rock for fuel gas contract cargo ship. And thank you to Baltzen, who now has command of our Dirt for fuel gas contract. Thanks again, y'all. I really appreciate your support. It's been really cool to have that outpouring here in the last few weeks. It means a lot to me. So we'll unpause these, let them get back out. They'll have to bounce back real quick to flip over to hydrogen, and then this should all get in motion again, which is good because we have a lot of dirt here actually kind of backing up across the base. Good to get that all through the system. All right, a couple quick updates from around the base. First and foremost, I have belatedly realized that you can just use waypoints instead of full-on stations for waiting bays, as you can see here. And that makes way more sense. I didn't even consider that this would be an option because I can't imagine the situation where you'd want to use a station instead of a waypoint for something like this. It takes more space. It costs construction parts 3, where waypoints are just free. You slap them down on the rails. So I'm a little confused, but hey, I'll take it. Obviously, this is better than having to use stations. So, oh well, it's a new feature and we're learning. Better late than never. So as you can see, I've changed the layout, and all of that room that it saves us means this is an improvement in a couple of ways. First, we have room for about twice as many trains and about half the space, and plenty of room to continue expanding in the future as we need it. So that's great. And second, it also gave me the opportunity to, with that saved space, connect up to the other side of the loop here. And so what that means is that our trains can enter or exit, enter and exit even, this set of waiting bays in either clockwise or counterclockwise directions. And that means that we got to get rid of the loop-to-loop, which no longer has a purpose if trains can essentially invert their orientation within our waiting bays. So that's lovely. That little loop was bothering me aesthetically, so glad we had the occasion to get rid of it. We did say we might come up with something more elegant in the future, and hey, I guess we did. The other thing I should call out in this area, I actually did this a little while ago, but I don't think I ever actually said it out loud. I connected the other side of this steel export here. It still can function with terminus type trains, but it can be a terminus from either direction, so to speak. You can enter and exit from the same side in either direction. What I was doing is something I like to do, especially as you get later into the game, if you have a bit of downtime. I was just sort of like, I don't know, I guess you would call it auditing paths, or looking at the user journey of individual trucks and trains, and just sort of seeing, okay, with all of the, nearly 200 vehicles that we have, and the, I guess, what, dozen or two trains that we have going, is anyone doing anything structurally inefficient? Because it can get pretty easy to lose that in the noise of all the activity around the base at a certain scale. And I was realizing that the journey for a train to take steel to anywhere else that we actually use it usually started with one of these guys sitting here in a waiting bay. And even with our improved setup out here, they were having to go all the way around and then enter the station like so, when they could just go like so, and then continue on. Now there's other journeys, of course, in the future that we will want to be able to accommodate, but that's our most common one right now, is grab steel, take it out to one of these destinations. And we can cut that initial part of the journey by 75% just by making this short rail connection here. So I thought that was something that was worth doing in a vacuum, but then also that process of keeping an eye on these, the actual individual trips and, making iterative adjustments was also just sort of a good activity to call out that is worthwhile. And similarly, doing some of the same work led me to make a couple changes out here in our contract area. The first is that noticing that we were mining a whole bunch of rock in this area and that these trucks were having to take it very far away when really this is a pretty reasonable option for us to be dropping off rock across the street where we're trading it, exporting it anyway. I added a manual drop off over here. It sort of simplified, took out some of these extra storages and just had everything merge up and distribute across the 3 different modules here. Similarly, to add a matching manual drop off over here on the dirt contract, I added this here, and these all sort of meet up and enter the dirt contract as well. These contracts have been going crazy, by the way. We have a ton of excess fuel gas still. We have like plenty of dirt. We would still be happy to bounce back for the next trip, but we are fully backed up. And that is despite the fact that I have been boosting these at 100% now for a minute. And that's great. It's good to see. I think what it means is we'll need to probably expand this setup. I don't know, maybe run it across the street here as we make a little bit more room. But that's going to be a next episode issue for sure. At any rate, these are working as we maybe hoped they would, right? We are generating quite a bit of excess hydrogen here. We weren't making really any before, right? Occasionally we had a little bit at the refinery, and now we're producing something like 100 a minute. It's not bad. Of course, our consumption has also gone up. It's these boat spikes, but in the net, as you can see, our quantity is just line go up. So it's nice to see this working as designed, as hoped. So taking stock of our to-do list then, the train network stuff took a bit longer than I expected. Turns out I was naively optimistic. I know, I'm just as shocked as you are. We are ready to do the rest of this work now. The construction parts for power generation stuff, even our food work. I know we still need to get the sulfur to coal contract set up, and we did not finish getting the low pressure turbines on the one exhaust filtration setup that we didn't move. And I actually kind of think this is a fine location for now. I may be okay with this once we actually swap out the proper larger cooling tower. So we could do all of that work now. We're actually fully set up to get it in motion. But I'm looking at the runtime and it's really getting up there for this episode, so we probably shouldn't start something new right now. And what that means is we have a nice little punch list for next episode already. And we'll work our way through that list while also taking stock of everything else we researched this episode. We have more hanging on our research to do here than we did at the beginning, don't we? By like an order of like factor of 3, probably 3x. Anyway, so while we're working our way through this next episode, we will also keep an eye on and continue to observe and tweak our train network. It's running pretty smoothly right now, but it's one of those things where this was a lot of change in a short period of time. So even if this weren't a brand new feature that we're still kind of learning and figuring out how to optimize and use, we'd still be iterating anyway in the coming sessions because it's a lot of change in a short period of time. So that'll be, I think, a fun continuation in the next episode, but it's more than just sitting here and staring at trains. We'll have something to work our way through in the background. So that feels like a good agenda for the next one. That's all for today, though. No blueprints to share, but I have a feeling the save file is going to be a helpful reference, so as usual, that'll be available on our Discord. Fun one today, though. We laid a ton of rail and built a ton of trains, and I do imagine that we'll keep that going in the next one as well. Until then, though, have a great rest of your day, and bye.